This is gonna be a long and personal video where I share everything I've learned so far this year. All the major lessons, all the major principles, everything that I wish that I could go back in time and tell myself at the beginning of this year. And obviously a lot of these lessons are gonna be during this crazy time that we're in, during this quarantine time. And I think that this quarantine's actually been really good in a lot of ways. It's made it so that a lot of us, including myself, have had to reflect and go deep inside. So I want to share with you some of the lessons I've learned so far this year. And maybe these are some things that you haven't encountered yet. And maybe these are some lessons that could help you to grow and achieve your goals and dreams even faster. Because I've been doing entrepreneurship full time. I quit my job almost 7.5 years ago, almost 8 years. And so I'm still learning things. Entrepreneurship is one of the best ways if you want to be involved in self-development. If you want to improve yourself, I think entrepreneurship is one of the best ways to make yourself a better you. Because that's deep down, sure, entrepreneurship, we get into it to make a lot of money, to do all these different things. But at the end of the day, I think it's the best self-development tool that there is. So let's get into my first of my 10 lessons, and that's to be your own boss. And let me explain what I mean by this, because I don't necessarily just mean quit your job, go be your own boss, be an entrepreneur. It's actually much deeper than that. What I mean by this is even when I quit my job, I wasn't my own boss for a long time. I let society and different voices in my head dictate what I should do and how I should spend my time. Now, if you've watched previous videos like this one, you know that recently I came up with the phrase, maybe it was like last year, do I want to do this? And do I need to do this? And basically what I found myself doing for most of my life is doing things that I didn't want to do, that I didn't need to do, but I felt like I quote unquote should do. And so this idea of be your own boss is make sure that when you're doing something, it's because you actually want to do it, not because your friends think that you should, not because society tells you that you should. And there's a lot of different examples of this. Actually, I'll just go deeply personal here, and I've talked a little bit about this before, but I felt like I should be working on my Amazon company Performance Nut Butter. Even though in the last year or so, I didn't really want to as much because I had so many other cool, exciting opportunities like this YouTube channel, and I didn't really need to because I'm making enough money now where I don't need to do anything for the money, which is an absolutely amazing place to be. And I will be completely honest. It helps you, when you don't have to do anything for the money, it does help you to realize a lot of these principles, a lot of these like self-actualization thoughts, like being your own boss. But still, I think I had this idealized version of what my dad would tell me to do. And I would listen, even though he doesn't necessarily always know the situations, what my old bosses would tell me to do, what my friends would tell me to do in certain situations. So a lot of times what I found myself doing in these last few years was doing things because I felt like I should be doing them. And because I felt like, okay, I'd have that voice of my dad in my head saying, hey, you're not working hard enough, you gotta go work harder. And the truth is that's so BS. So one of the biggest skills in this last 6 months that I think I'm really getting better and better at. And this is something I don't think I'm necessarily I'm a pro at. I'm not the best at doing this, but one thing that I've gotten a lot better at is learning to listen to myself. And this is a skill I hope, if you take one thing away from this video, I'll probably say this again, but if you take one thing away from this video, it's learn to listen to yourself. A lot of people probably watch my videos and say, well, Travis did it this way, so I need to do it this way. No. I'm just an example. Everything that I do is just an example. Try it out. Sure, just like you would try a new dish at a restaurant. You can say, oh, don't be attached to it, but you can test it out, try it out. But at the end of the day, a skill that I've really been working on is learning to listen to myself. What do I think in this situation? Because I love asking for other people's feedback. You'll see it sometimes if you're in my YouTube community or you go to my Instagram or things like that. I'll ask people for opinions. Hey, what do you think, this thumbnail or this thumbnail? I'll ask them, I'll ask people, what do you think I should do in this situation? But one of the biggest skills in this last few months and I think quarantine's really helped with this, is learning to listen to myself, learning to see how I feel about a situation. And another example of this is a lot of times mentors, people that I really admire and respect will give me advice. And a lot of times they don't know the full they don't know my story. They don't know everything about me or the situation. And because they give me this advice, there's this part of me that feels guilty for not doing it. If you watch my videos before, there was a guy that was telling me, oh, you need to blow up Performance Nut Butter, like stop focusing on YouTube, stop focusing on all that other stuff. But the reason he told me that is because he felt like that was the right answer for him, not because it necessarily was the right answer for me. And that's the big thing. When I give advice to students in the course, for instance, I usually tell them with the caveat, hey, this is my opinion, but you need to learn to listen to yourself. And people usually don't want to hear that. Most people just want someone to tell them what to do. But this is going to be the most valuable skill, is learning to listen to yourself. So how do you do this? I'm going to give you a few practical things, because I wish someone would have. A lot of times, this like airy-fairy advice, people give this kind of stuff. They say, oh, listen to yourself, listen to your heart, whatever. But there's usually not some kind of practical application. So a few different ways that you can do this is, I personally like going to the beach, because at the beach, if I'm by myself listening to some music, there's no other distractions. There's only my voice in my head, or maybe some music or whatever. And so I think spending some time alone. Also, journaling is a really good one. One thing, I probably talked about this before, one of the best things I love doing, I haven't done it in a while, is having conversations with my future self. And I like to write it out. I think you can do it like verbally, but I think there's something very powerful to writing it out as if it's a story. And I'll write out word for word. I walk into a coffee shop, and we meet in different locations depending, but I'll say I walk into a coffee shop, and I'll describe the coffee shop, and I'll describe how I look. And like as I'm walking up to the table, I see my future self, and I describe how I look. I'm like, wow, he's so confident, and he's just so relaxed. Even right now, like his shoulders are back. He's talking. I can just see that he's slow and deliberate and confident in all of his actions. And as soon as I get in, he stands up and he smiles and he hugs me. And as soon as we sit down, the waitress has already brought over the tea for both of us. He already ordered for me. He's so thoughtful. And so I describe all this stuff, and then I ask my future self questions. I say, hey, Travis, and I usually do 7 or 10 years in the future. I pick a number. I think 7 years is about what I do. And so this guy, obviously in my head, has all the experience, and usually he won't give me very specific answers. And I might ask, I'm stuck with Performance Nut Butter. I'm really not that passionate about it anymore, and I'm much more passionate about working on the course and working on the YouTube channel. What should I do? And I'll describe what this person, my idealized future self, will say to me. And it's the truth is, I have the answers already inside of me. But by kind of writing it out in this way that's almost like a fictional narrative, it makes it easier to digest. So those are some different things you can do, but just understand that's one of the hardest skills I think to learn in entrepreneurship or in life in general, is learning to listen to yourself and learning to be yourself. So another thing to keep in mind, another big lesson that I've learned that I really struggled with in this last few 6 months or 7 months, whatever, is realizing you will make mistakes. I make mistakes. There's no getting around that. I think a lot of people think that they're gonna do everything perfect. And for me personally, because I share freaking everything on this YouTube channel, I really feel like I wanna try to do everything perfect. And when I launch Performance Nut Butter Cacao, I want it to be a huge success. I wanna never make mistakes. I don't wanna waste money. And if you watched this channel before, you know that I've got a lot of hang-ups around wasting money. And this brings up the question, what is wasting money? What does it mean to quote unquote waste money? If I spend $5,000 on something and realize it was that product was a failure, is that a waste, or is that actually a test? Is that an investment and I saved myself? Like, it's not necessarily a waste. So what does it mean to quote unquote waste money? But the bigger realization is you're gonna make mistakes. And a crazy realization for myself is, honestly, some of my biggest mistakes have led to some of my best YouTube videos. Some of my biggest mistakes have led to some of my best opportunities. And I think once you realize this, that the quote unquote there's like almost no, like what's the difference between a mistake and a lesson learned? There's almost nothing. But it's realizing that you're not gonna do everything perfect, and that's okay. When I plan out my 5-year plan, when I sit down and think about what I'm gonna be doing in the next few years, I assume everything's gonna go perfectly well. And that's just That's not realistic. So tip number 3, or the lesson learned number 3, is vacations are mandatory. And this is something that I haven't been taking a lot of vacations recently, though I've tried with the quarantine and with the travel restrictions and all that kind of stuff. I've tried to do like staycations, but I end up just working, and I end up just not really ever fully, not relaxing as much as I would like. And it's a weird thing for me because I really enjoy a lot of the work I do, but there's a fine line between doing, like, what'll happen is I'll wake up and I'll write scripts and I'll be doing things I really enjoy on a Saturday, for instance. Sometimes, usually I try not to work on the weekends, but on a Saturday I'm like, well, I'm really excited I want to write these scripts. And for the first hour or two, it's really fun, but then it almost becomes compulsive. I'm like, well, I've already gotten this far, I want to finish them. And I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent here. But the point I want to make is that vacations are mandatory because it helps you to get detached from all your different ideas and all your different attachments. So example of this, all my best ideas, all my big game-changing ideas, and like I feel like sometimes I'm going in this direction and I'm taking baby steps, and then all of a sudden I go on a vacation, I realize, oh, I can go in this direction and I can sprint over here. So vacations, I think, help you to get some perspective. And one thing I've realized is I need some longer vacations. I've done a few. We went to Santa Barbara. Ariana and I went to Santa Barbara for like a 3-day weekend, which was really nice. And I went to San Diego for a 3-day weekend, but I think I need a 5, 6, 7-day, maybe even a 2-week vacation. I'm planning on doing one in September. So I'm going to be launching version 2.0 of the Passion Product Formula in September on, I think, September 1st. And obviously, if you guys want to join, as long as you go through the course and launch a product, if you complete the course and launch a product, you get your money back. It's a deposit. So if you haven't joined yet, I think it's an amazing I'm adding so many freaking bonuses to it. Honestly, I think the value is absolutely insane. I'm trying to make it so it's not only is it a no-brainer that once people join, they're just like blown away. I'm doing weekly Q&A calls. I'm adding a bunch of different lessons. I'm adding just like all this different feedback I've been getting from the students. I think we're starting to build a really strong tribe, a really strong community. That's a side tangent. September 1st, that's going to be coming out. But after I launch that, I'm planning on taking a little 2-week vacation. I'm still going to be doing probably some weekly Q&A calls during that time. So anyways, going back to the vacations, what I find is my brain is in work mode and it's stuck in this like little box. But then once I go on a vacation, it takes me some time to adapt. The first day or two, I'm still stuck in this little circle of thoughts about like trying to figure out different work things. But then what happens is at a certain point, I'm able to kind of get out of it. And I'm able to like break free from these like circular loops. But what I find is it probably takes me 2 or 3 days before I'm able to break out of that loop. So when I went to Santa Barbara, for instance, that Sunday, we left on a Thursday, I think Friday, Saturday. By Sunday, I was finally starting to be able to relax a little bit, and it was time to go home. And so I'm really excited to take a 2-week vacation. And the reason I bring this whole thing up is you need to plan vacations out ahead of time. And in fact, I'm going to say this to myself right now. Maybe it's hard for me to do this right now because there's something that we're waiting to see. Ariana's got something she might be able to go film for a game show. I can't give too much details away. And they're not sure what the dates would be. We're not 100% sure if she's going to be able to be part of this game show. But if she is, the dates, they're not sure what the dates are going to be, so we can't book. But generally speaking, I think booking in your calendar a 1 week, 2 week, whatever it is, vacation every so often is super important, because the idea is work shrinks or work expands to the amount of time that you give it. So if you say, I'm going to take a vacation as soon as I launch this product, well, that product might not get launched for months, or something like that might happen. Or if you say, hey, I'm taking a vacation August or September 7th to the 14th, no matter what, then you have to plan around it. And I think there's something very powerful around that. It's this idea of having certain constants in your life, certain pillars, and then everything else fits around that. And this has been a big struggle for me. This might be a tip that I talk about later, but this has been a big struggle for me because for the last 7.5 years or whatever of being a full-time entrepreneur, I've been like scraping, and I've been trying to work really hard to make money. And now I'm at this point in my life where I'm making more money than I had imagined I would. And I'm making more than enough money. But it's also weird, and this is something not a lot of people tell you, is so I'm making 4 or 5x what my previous goal was when I quit my corporate job. But what nobody tells you is once you start making more money, you start realizing how much freaking opportunity there is. Like I have so many different opportunities for really cool, like different things that I could do. Like for instance, I'm not even doing paid ads for my course. If I wanted to do paid ads for my course, I probably could double the amount of money that I'm making. Now that's not my focus. My focus is on making the course as good as possible first. And then after that, even my goal is to grow this YouTube channel. Like, look, if I wanted to make as much money as possible, I could do a lot of different things. That's no longer my goal. My goal is to be able to help people out as much as possible. Like actually help people create and launch passion products and help other people to be free from their financial struggles. Like to be able to, what I call slay the money dragon. You may have heard me talk about this in previous videos, but I think this is such a powerful metaphor. If you look at stories of like hero journey type stories, the hero oftentimes goes and kills the dragon. Now, what does the dragon represent? The dragon represents that thing that's terrorizing your village, that thing that's terrorizing your psychology. For me growing up, that thing that terrorized my family unit, my village, was money. And we weren't poor. We were middle class, very working middle class. My dad cleaned pools growing up. My mom would sew costumes for like dance costumes. We were pretty working class, middle class. And we lived a great life. Like I'm not by any means complaining, but I could see that there was this fear of money. And I've told this story before. We'd go out to restaurants and the bill would come and my dad would be like, "Oh my," I could see the pain, and I don't want to have that. Like I want to go kill that money dragon, slay the money dragon, I call it. Because the idea is once you can make money on demand and you come up with those skills, then you don't have to be afraid of money anymore. You shouldn't be afraid of money. Money is just a tool. So I'm going off on a bunch of different tangents here. So anyways, I think that's still just principle number 3. Vacations are mandatory. So let's go into lesson number 4, the 4th thing that I've learned. And I'll talk some more in-depth things and maybe some more personal things with some of these things, but trust. So what does trust mean? Trust, letting go. So for instance, Performance Nut Butter Cacao, I wanted it to be successful. I didn't want to lose money and blah, blah, blah. But if I take a higher level view and realize that it's almost not important how well Performance Nut Butter Cacao does, that it's just a step in the right direction. And if I just trust in the universe, if I trust in, whatever higher power, and this is a whole nother tangent, but I don't really care, what religion you have. You got to realize that there's something bigger than yourself out there. And I think that's just so obvious. Like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And this isn't, look, if you're a hardcore atheist, that's completely okay. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's a bigger system out there. And to me, that's, again, I guess maybe this is too much of a tangent, but I have this belief that there's something more to life than just like, that we're dirt and that when we die, we're going to turn into dirt and all that kind of stuff. Man, I could go off on a bunch of tangents on this. So I'll put a pin in that for a second here. And if you don't believe me, there's a really good, I think it's Donald Hoffman. He talks about, if you believe in evolution here, okay, so let's go on a quick side tangent. If you're a hardcore atheist and you believe in evolution, and if you look at the way that animals evolve, the animals that evolve aren't the ones that are seeing reality. Because if you have one animal that sees reality and one animal that sees less reality but sees the things that'll help them to survive and reproduce, this one's gonna win. So they see less of the truth than this one does. And if you do that over generations after generations via evolution, eventually all animals, including humans, which are very much animals, don't see reality how it actually is. We see it in a way that makes sense. And the metaphor, I think it's Donald Hoffman, I'll put a link to his video down below. The metaphor he uses is if you look at a computer desktop, like the desktop screen, what's going on in the desktop isn't actually what's going on in the computer, because in the real computer it's it's electrons, it's a bunch of ones and zeros, it's completely something abstract that our brains can't interpret. The desktop is just a graphical user interface. And so what he's saying is our perception of reality is just a graphical user interface. And that basically his belief, and it's not, he uses math to prove this, his belief is that everything is just consciousness. He's got a really great TED Talk. I think it's one of the best TED Talks I've ever seen. That's not important. What is important to me is there's this Alan Watts quote, and he says, and Alan Watts is like a philosopher, very hippy-dippy type guy. I love him. I think he's great. But his quote is, the way to gain more power in life is by letting go of power. And I think this is true on multiple different wavelengths. In business, if you want your business to become more powerful, stronger, bigger, better, you need to let go of the power. What do I mean by this? So at first, when you start a business, you're doing everything. Then eventually you hire a virtual assistant, and you gotta let go of some of your power. You gotta say, hey, you're in charge of social media. I have this control, but I'm letting go of control. And what happens is you're able to make the business bigger and bigger. And every step of the way, you're letting go of control. You're letting go of power. And I firmly believe that in life, part of becoming more powerful is learning to let go and focusing on the things that you can control and you can influence and letting go of the things that you can't. That's how you can become more powerful. And that's trusting. That's what trusting is. And honestly, I think this is such a powerful mindset shift, is whether you think that everything happens for a reason or it doesn't happen for a reason. In my opinion, everything happens for a reason, period. And maybe the reason isn't some divine plan reason, but the reason everything, you can always look at something like that happened for a reason and figure it out in your head. And I think that's a powerful frame, even if you don't believe it from like a philosophical, religious sense. So that leads me to point number 5, lesson number 5, which is to hire people. Whew, man, if you want to grow your business, you're going to need to hire other people. And I think that hiring people is one of the highest leverage tasks that you can do. What I mean by this is when you're first starting out, again, you're doing everything yourself. But as you start getting redundant, things start getting redundant, repetitive, and boring, you need to start hiring people. And this is a big, I've obviously been working with virtual assistants and stuff for a long time. And this last year, in the beginning of January, I went from 3 virtual assistants. I hired a 4th virtual assistant, and I hired a guy here in LA that's working for me 2 to 3 days a week. I hired a guy in Michigan who's gonna take over Performance Nut Butter. Again, I let go of the power of Performance Nut Butter. I'm basically letting him take full control and just run with it. And I hired a guy in Spain he's going to be doing a bunch of different things for me. Most of it's going to be somewhat project-based work, but on top of it, it's going to be like, he's helping me with version 2.0 of the course. I'm really excited about that. He's helping me kind of design the landing pages and do a bunch of other things. And see, what I'm learning again and again is, in the past, I wanted to do everything myself. There's just not enough time in the day. And as I make more money, it's easier to hire people, but I think it's like the more brain power you have working on something, the more likely it is to be successful in some ways. There's an idea, I'm a big fan of law of attraction, and I think a lot of people mess up law of attraction because a lot of people think law of attraction is just cut out some things, put it on a vision board, and wish that it happens. No, that's not what real law of attraction type stuff is. If you look at Napoleon Hill, real law of attraction is, be very clear, visualize what you want, but start living as if you have it, and at the same time putting the work in. And to me, that's just obvious. Some people like to look at that and like, oh, that's a bunch of hippie nonsense. It's like, no, you make a goal, you put in the work to make it happen, and you switch your mindset from being like, I hope that happens one day, into thinking, I'm in that reality right now. So a goal, for an example of this for me would be the course. I want to get 50 people to sign up for the course September 1st. And I believe, I have zero doubt that that's going to happen. And it's just so obvious to me. But if I was constantly like, I don't know, I'm scared, is it going to happen or not? I'm going to miss opportunities. So basically, from like a more scientific point of view, I'm priming my subconscious to know that this is the reality, that it's going to be successful, and start looking for, you know what? I have a friend that has a podcast. Maybe I can go on his podcast and talk about the course. So it primes you to see opportunities. They did this thing where they had, I forget, I'm gonna butcher the thing, but they basically asked people, do you consider yourself lucky or unlucky? And the people and then they gave them a task to go through a newspaper and count how many images there were. And the people that said they were lucky got it done like way, way, way faster. And the reason they were able to get it done way, way, way faster is because on the first page, there was like a headline or something like that that said, you can stop counting, or maybe it was like the second or third page, you can stop counting, there's 43 images. And the people that said they were lucky were like astronomically more likely to see that. And so what I'm saying is, by believing in yourself that you're lucky, by believing that you're going to achieve your goals, you're going to see opportunities that people that are like, well, I'm just not a lucky person, aren't going to see. And so it's not necessarily something that's outside of your brain, outside in the universe, and maybe it is, I don't know, tangents again. But anyways, back to hiring people. So one of the things, when I hired the guy in Spain, he was expensive. It's expensive. Hiring people in the Philippines are relatively affordable. When you first do it, it's a little bit scary, don't get me wrong. But when I hired my first non-Filipino, I've hired non-Filipinos in the past, but with this guy, I felt like it forced me to get more work done, because he was kind of almost, we'd meet all the time. We'd meet like every day or 3 times a week or whatever, and he'd ask for more and more tasks. And to give him more tasks, I had to get things done. For instance, I'm like, all right, we're going to build a new landing page. And he's like, cool. I need you to make this video. And I'm like, I don't want to make that video. But he's like, yeah, well, the landing page isn't going to be done until you make this video. Or another example is, I give him a task of launching a podcast. And he's like, all right, well, we need more episodes. And so he forces me to get more work done. So hiring people, I think, is extremely powerful. But let's switch gears here and let's talk about another lesson I learned, something even deeper and more personal. And this is honesty. I think that you need to be as honest as you possibly can be. And for me, the way that this came out, like I always try to be honest on YouTube. It's hard. This is something not a lot of people tell you, is like I really pride myself, or really try to be as honest as possible. But it's hard on YouTube, because I know that if I lied and I just made up numbers, like so many people do. So many people I see on YouTube are making up numbers. And if I was one of those people, I know in the short run at least, I could make more money. I could just totally BS. I don't feel good about doing that. And I catch myself, look, there's not any videos I can think of where I've lied in recent history or anything like that. But I catch myself like slightly starting to slide over into like wanting to fib a little bit. And I don't like that. And it makes me feel bad. It makes me feel like I'm going into this kind of like a negative mental space, like a pit, basically, once I start doing that. And part of the reason I've had the beginning of this year, I had a lot of anxiety. I'm gonna do actually a future video. Comment down below if you want me to do a video about this. I don't know, this is totally off topic, but I kind of want to do a video about how I cured my anxiety. And part of the reason, this isn't gonna be the full thing, but part of the reason, a big cure for my anxiety actually was realizing that I need to be more honest on YouTube and just tell people, hey, this is how I feel. If you don't like it, if you think I'm a scammer or a fake guru, then bye. Like, see you later. But like, this is what I really care. And what I'm talking about here, and I've said this a lot in some previous video, I feel like I'm almost talking about this too much, but the fact that I kind of been losing passion for performance nut butter, that was hard for me to admit. And in the last few videos, I've kind of admitted that, and I'm gonna do another video in the next few weeks, diving in even a little bit deeper, talking about some of my future projects and some of the future things I'm gonna be doing. But I felt like I was very much attached to this idea, well, it's a passion product. I need to prove to people that I'm gonna be passionate about this for life. And that's not realistic. You can launch a passion product and then not be like, look, I still think performance nut butter is absolutely amazing. It's a great product, but I'm just like, I've got so many passions in so many different fields that I wanna go work on the course. I'm launching a new product with a student, and in November of this year, I plan on launching a completely brand new passion product. It's gonna be a premium clothing item. There's so many details about that. I'm really excited about that. I think it's gonna be really fun to make that. And that excites me. Performance nut butter, working on that is kind of boring at this point. And so anyways, I wanna go back. There's a few little things I wanna say here. As far as honesty, I don't know, I don't wanna call out anyone in particular, but there was one YouTuber where I saw a video where this particular YouTuber talked about making $400,000 from their Shopify store. And I looked at it and I'm like, I don't believe that look, it could totally be possible. I don't know this for sure, but they were saying that, oh, well, it's all from social media, no paid advertisements. And I looked at their social media and I did a little bit more research, and I'm like, making $400,000, $400,000 a month is what this person said. Making $400,000 a month, I think it was around there. It might have been even more than that, but that's not easy to do on a Shopify store, especially just from social media, no paid ads. And I swear, there was even a scene where this person scrolled down and showed more information. I remember looking at the total number of sessions and the numbers just didn't add up. But then when I went back later to try to find that thing, it had been deleted. And I'm not gonna say who this person is because I don't wanna start like a whole thing, but this is probably one of the biggest other YouTubers talking about e-commerce. Talks about a lot of similar topics to what I'm talking about. Again, I don't want to start a thing, but I saw that and it made me feel bad about myself because I'm like, wow, this person is potentially making so much money, and it makes me realize how much more I could be making. So first off, one thing I want to say about this is that when I saw that, my initial thought was, it makes me feel bad because they're making $400,000 a month and I'm not doing nearly that much. But then the second part is, well, that's really cool, because if this person actually is doing that and their social media is pretty mediocre, then that means that there's a huge opportunity that like I'm not even doing 1/10, 1/100th of what I could be potentially doing on e-commerce. But the whole reason I brought this up is because the more I investigated and the more I thought about it, I'm like, I think this is BS. I don't even think this person's telling the truth. And maybe they are. I have no idea. That's not the point of this video. But something I found with myself is I want to be as honest as possible. And I think in the long run, that's what's going to make me successful, is that I'm going to tell you guys how it actually is. I'm going to say, yeah, I launched Performance Nut Butter Cacao. I'm making an extra $1,000 a month, which is all right. It's not freaking amazing, but hey, most people, 99% of the world would be pumped to have an extra $1,000 a month passive income. And I'm over here complaining about it. And so I think that by being honest and showing the real truth, it made me excited again. So here's another little tidbit. In the last few weeks, I've been excited about life again, which sounds funny to say, but there's been good chunks of my life where I was just kind of going through the motions. Like, not that I was sad, but I'm actually freaking really excited about life right now. And part of it is because I let go of Performance Nut Butter, let go of my attachment from Performance Nut Butter and said, you know what? I don't care what people say. I'm gonna go full force and I'm gonna try to make the best effing course on Amazon, on e-commerce I possibly can. So this entire month of August, I'm doing nothing but for the most part, almost nothing. Like my main focus, 90% of my time is focusing on, sure, I'm making some YouTube videos, but most of my focus is on making the best freaking course and working with my students. And honestly, I'm gonna be completely blunt. The next few years, I'm probably gonna put more energy into the students than I am into myself or my own businesses, because that's what excites me right now. And that might change a year or two from now, or even when I launch this product in November. I'm gonna continue to launch new products. But the reason I'm gonna launch new products isn't to go make a bunch of money. If I wanted to make a bunch of money, all I'd have to do is set up a paid ads funnel and run a bunch of paid ads to my course. And that'd be an easy way to make a bunch of money. That's not, I mean, look, I'd love a bunch of money and I'm doing pretty well financially. I'd love more money, all that kind of stuff. But that's not my main goal. My main goal at this point is a few different things, but it's to help other people overcome that, to slay the money dragon, right? And so the reason I'm gonna be launching this new product in November is to go through and test my course again. I'm gonna film a bunch of videos and I'm gonna show live to inspire other people and show them, hey, this is pretty easy. Because I think that when I first started out, I'm like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. But I've done it enough times now where I can break it down, and I think it'll make for really entertaining and interesting content. And to be completely blunt and honest with you, I like getting new subscribers on YouTube. I like getting new views. I like getting all the positive comments. In fact, do me a favor. I'm gonna check the comments on this video. Leave a comment down below if I've positively impacted your life and you haven't let me know before, or even if you have, I'd love to know how I have. And if I haven't, that's fine. Still smash that like button. But please leave a comment, because one thing not a lot of people realize is I'm sitting here talking to this camera right now, and I don't know if I'm helping anybody. I don't know if I'm just talking to myself sometimes, because now at this point in the video, this is like 30, 40 minutes into this video, most people have dropped off. So if you're still watching this video at this point, there must be some reason that, like, there must be something I'm doing that's helping you out. And if I'm not, hey, let me know that in the comments down below. So one of the big things I will say though, a big principle, if I could go back in time, is be extremely honest. Like, I think, first off, I think everybody should start a YouTube channel. I'll do a video in the future talking about YouTube versus Amazon FBA. And the short answer is do freaking both. They're different business models, different business strategies. You can't sell a YouTube channel, but you can make money pretty easily in a lot of ways. Where Amazon business, you can grow it, you can sell it. It's much more passive. A YouTube channel is not passive. I got to make videos every week. Otherwise, YouTube algorithm will start, tanking me. So it's completely different business models. But just a general principle in life, be honest. I think the more, I have a principle in my life. I try not to lie. I try never to lie. And I think it's better just to be honest. In the past, for instance, someone would say, hey, do you want to come do this thing? Blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, oh, no, sorry, I'm busy. Nowadays, I'll just say, to be honest, that doesn't sound that interesting to me. Or sometimes to spare their feelings, I will say I'm busy, and maybe I am busy. I'm busy, going to the beach by myself, or I'm busy reading a book, or whatever. You don't always have to be mean about it. It's not this radical honesty to a point, obviously. But I think if someone asks you something, sometimes it's easier just to say, hey, to be honest with you, that doesn't sound fun. Anyways, let's move. Oh, this is actually perfect. Lesson number 7 is be excited. So like I said before, I'm just now becoming excited about life again because I have, and so something I've learned, and let's make sure this isn't a future. A way to be excited about life, in my opinion, is figure out what is that thing that you want to accomplish. I personally love to have one goal where like all my energy is on that and I'm excited about that goal. And part of this too is being honest about yourself, like being honest to yourself and saying, is this something I really want to do, or is this something that other people think I should do? And trust me, I've done a lot of things in my life because I felt like other people thought I should do them, but I'm not excited about that. What I'm excited about are things where I get excited when basically I have this goal that I really believe in. And what I find happens is, everyone will say, hey, Travis, you should really be working on performance nut butter. And then I'm like, I really want to work on my course. I really want to make version 2.0 of the Passion Products Formula. And I get really excited about it. And as I start getting excited about it, and as I start telling people, they feed off my excitement. They're like, yeah, like you should be working on that. And so everybody has their own ideas of what you should be doing, but they're also kind of a mirror for you. They're reflecting. And sometimes, like for instance, quitting my corporate job, everyone told me don't quit your corporate job. But at a certain point, I worked myself up so much, I was able to convince people, I'm like, no, this is the right thing to do. And they saw that I was just unwavering, that I was absolutely like, no, this is it, and blah, 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 blah. This is why. And like I thought it out. And so people were able to listen to me. I'm going to be releasing, I may have, by the time this is live, I may have already released a podcast, but I did a podcast with my mom. And it's really interesting. If you want to hear her side of the story, not that there's sides, but like her version of the story about quitting my job, it was tough times for me. And I'll put a link to that down below if it's out by the time this video comes out. So here's the thing I want to get at is it's not always going to be possible in your life. But if you're not excited about what you're doing, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it for the money? That's cool. Do you need the money? If you really do, like, look, if you got a family and you got to like feed your kids, then I get it. Like that's a different thing. But then you should be excited about doing it because it's going to feed your family, like, right? Like if you're depressed and you're like, I freaking hate this thing, like you need to change your mindset at that point. Like I hear that sometimes when people are like, well, I hate my job, but I've got no choice because I need to feed my kids. I'm like, you should be super freaking grateful that you have this job. And I know that's easy for me to say, someone that does what I love and all that kind of stuff. But for 99% of the people watching this, why are you not excited about what you're doing? How can you become excited about what you're doing, or how can you do something that excites you? That's the question. That's the whole point of the Passion Products Formula. My course is like helping you find something that you're excited about doing and just crushing it and just loving it. And it's a process, don't get me wrong, because I go in and out of excitement too. But when I listen to myself and I actually do things that are fun, first off, when I'm excited about something, I just get so much more done. It's like effortless. It's like going with the current versus trying to fight against the current. Lesson number 8, and that is focus on what works. And this is the 80-20 principle. And I'm not going to go too in depth about this because I feel like I've beaten this to death. But to be fair, at this point, if you're this far into the video, you're probably okay just hearing me like vent and talk about some personal stuff. But when I look at the 80-20 of my finances and the 80-20 of what makes me happy, it's this YouTube channel and my course, 100%. But and funny enough, when I look at the 80-20 of what makes me frustrated or stressed, it's performance. Like 80% of the things that stress me out, maybe even 90% of the things that stress me out are performance, nut butter. And 90% of what gives me the happiness is this YouTube channel and the course. And so it's been a big mindset shift to start focusing on the things that work. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but there was probably like a 3 to 4 month period where I lived in Las Vegas at a friend's house. He's a multi-millionaire YouTuber, and it was a bunch of entrepreneurs that were all staying in this. They were all YouTubers, except for, I guess I was a YouTuber at the time too. And they're all YouTubers staying in this house. He's one of the most fascinating people I've ever met in my life. And the thing that was so fascinating about him is he just did whatever he wanted. He didn't have, like, I have a lot of that guilt. I have a lot of that, like, oh, I'm going to do things I feel like I should be doing. I'm going to do the right thing. He would do something, like, he's the kind of guy that, like, he'd be in the middle of a project and just say, you know what, I'm going to go to Bali for 2 weeks out of the blue. Like, he'll just wake up in the morning and be like, I just want to do this really bad, so I'm going to go do it. And then, like, he's just that kind of person where he does things 100% or zero. Like, there's no in between. And I thought about, like, if he was me, he would just walk away from PNB. He would just walk away from it and just focus. And you see this, so this is something I want to bring up because I think it's very important. A lot of the people you see on YouTube that are teaching how to make money online, they've either, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, they've either never done it or they did it one time 3 years ago and they've completely forgotten how to do it. And that's why there's so many sleazy people, for lack of a better word, in this space. There's so many people that are just cringe, like, I don't want to give any names. You can leave comments down below of people that you think are like that, but I don't want to give out any names, but there's so many people that are just snake oil salesmen. And I don't want to be one of those people. And so so that's part of the reason why I'm very much like hesitant not to focus on PNB, because I don't want to be one of those people. But what I think, like I said 100 times at this point, is that I'm going to continue to launch new products. And to be honest, my thing is, I think it's much more impressive to go from $0 to $100,000 a year in profit than it is to go from $100,000 a year in profit to $1 million a year, for instance. And I think that I want to get really good at going from $0 to $100,000 of profit, basically, because that's a skill that if I can teach that to other people, that's so powerful. For instance, me taking Performance Nut Butter from $100,000 profit a year to $1 million profit a year isn't going to make me a better teacher. But if I can go from $0 to $100,000 a year multiple times with multiple different companies, testing out my method from different angles, that's going to make me a better teacher. And this is the biggest realization I've had is I thought that I had to do one thing for the rest of my life. And I think that Steve Jobs, if you haven't seen his commencement speech, absolutely amazing, the Stanford commencement speech, go check it out. But he talks about, in life, you can't connect the dots going forward. So you can't, like, people want to plan out 5 years ahead of time, and you can't do that really because you don't know what's going to happen. But if you look back and you look at everything you've been through and you look at every part of your story, it just connects so beautifully. For instance, for me, I did Be Dancewear, right? My first company was the dance clothing company, something I was not passionate about at all. And I'm really grateful I went through that. And, you know, obviously if I could go back in time, I would tell myself, do something you're passionate about. But the fact that I did something I wasn't passionate about and the fact that it struggled a little bit was actually a great thing. Like, look, the business did decently well, but it wasn't nearly as profitable as Performance Nut Butter. And that's actually a really good thing because you know why? It leads to a better story. And so it leads to a better story so I can relate to people, so I can connect with people, and so that I can help people understand why selling something you're passionate about is so good. Because basically, I can tell the people my story and they can relate to it. And the way that humans transfer information is very fascinating. Sure, I could give you a bunch of stats and statistics, but if I actually, and I'll link down below. So the first episode of the podcast, yeah, if you haven't checked out the podcast yet and you're watching this video, you'd love the podcast. So the first episode of the podcast, I talked about step by step, basically my story and how every aspect of it. And my story is really powerful because, as I was alluding to, humans teach not through a bunch of statistics and stats, they teach through story. For the last, I don't know how long humans have been able to communicate for, like actually verbally communicate, probably 2 million years, something like that. Humans have been telling stories to give big lessons, because really life-changing lessons, like the idea that you should do something you're passionate about, it's hard to convey with numbers or like stats. But if I tell you my story, and again, link down below for like my full story, you can feel the emotions, you can feel the ups and the downs, and by the end you're like, wow, I see why it's so powerful to do something you're passionate about. So that's an example of, at the time, I didn't know that the reason I was doing this was for some bigger purpose in the long run. But now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, everything is built so beautifully. And so again, Performance Nut Butter Cacao, not being as successful as I wanted it to be, probably a really good thing. Because if it would have been really successful, I probably would have got sucked in and worked on performance nut butter more, when I don't think that that's my mission in life. I think my mission in life is so much bigger than just making a successful nut butter company. I really believe that my mission in life is to help people to create, first off, in the short run, to create products that they're passionate about, and discover the emotional side of working hard. That you can't just be this robot that just works and tries to make money for the sake of making money, that you need to have passion for what you're doing. And in fact, having passion for what you're doing actually makes it more fun, makes it easier, and you're gonna make more money in the long run. So let's move on to lesson number 9. So one of the biggest principles in the last 6 months, so far this year, and again, this video is meant to be kind of every so often, I like to look back at the previous 3 months, the previous 6 months, and figure out what are the commonalities, what are the patterns, what are the things, the biggest lessons, the things that I wish I would have learned earlier, and then writing them down. And this new thing I'm doing, obviously, is making videos and sharing it with you. And here's something interesting. I actually go back and I rewatch these videos. So the reason I'm making this video isn't just for you, it's for me. So I'm really trying to make something as powerful as possible. I'm trying to like explain step by step through my thought process to hopefully give you the lesson without having to experience the pain. And so let's talk about enjoying the now. And this is such a cliche, it's such a hippy dippy, blah, 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 whatever thing. Now, I've talked about this before on the Travis Talks channel, but let me just break this down for you for a second. Right now, you're living in paradise. Yeah, I get it. Times are tough. You have some issue, whatever. And look, for a very small percentage of people watching this, maybe you do have something that's really terrible going on, but for the most part, you're living in paradise. You have running water. You have, indoor plumbing. You have, I got a computer right here that has access to all the information on the knowledge. If you're watching this right now, you've got something that is absolutely incredible. You have electricity. You have food. You're not starving. I guarantee if you're watching this video right now, you can afford to feed yourself. Yeah, maybe you can't afford the latest iPhone. Maybe you can't afford this or that. You know what? And maybe you have personal struggles going on, and I get it. Man, that's tough. But compared to a caveman 200,000 years ago, he would laugh at you. The struggles that he had to deal with were insane. And so you go back, let's say 200,000 years ago, and they'd be like, man, you know what paradise would be? Is if I could just have a reliable source of clean water. They would think that's paradise. Fast forward, 10,000 years ago, or maybe even less, fast forward 100,000 years ago, and maybe they found the humans, this tribe of humans or whatever, found a clean, sustainable source of water, and they think, man, that's awesome, but what would make me really happy is to have food on demand, and I'm sick of having to go hunt and gather. I just want food all the time. Then comes agriculture, and they have food, and obviously sometimes there's sometimes there's bad seasons and stuff. And so over time, they get better and better at agriculture. And then they say, that's really cool, but I'm kind of bored. I wish there was something to do for fun. The radio's invented, television's invented. And then we say to ourselves, yeah, but I want to learn things and I can't learn everything I want. The internet's invented. You name it. You go to the grocery store right now, you can buy food from all over the world. Right now, in my opinion, you're living way better than a king was 500 years ago, 400 years ago, whatever. A king back then, this is paradise compared to what he was experiencing. Maybe he could have food from a few different parts of the world or some crazy different things. You can do all that. And if you wanted to talk to someone on the other side of the world, you probably couldn't do that. Definitely couldn't do it instantaneously. So my point is, thinking that whatever your desire is, whatever that next thing is, thinking that that's going to make you happy. Once I make X amount of money, then I'm finally going to be happy, is the most ridiculous thing ever. because compared to a caveman, they would think that this is paradise. So realizing that you are in paradise is, I think, the biggest thing. And I'm not perfect at this. Don't get me wrong. There's times where I forget this completely. But once you come to that realization, it allows you to enjoy the now. So just a random personal anecdote. That's a weird word to me. A personal anecdote. There's a show on Amazon Prime called Upload, where basically after people die, they can upload their consciousness into like a simulation. And I'm absolutely fascinated with this idea of that we're all in a simulation. If you watch like Elon Musk talk about it, or there's some other people that are, Elon Musk kind of just popularized it. He wasn't the first person to come up with this, but there's this idea that we're all living in a simulation. And I'm not gonna go into the math behind it, but it statistically seems very likely. And I don't know if we're living in a simulation, or sometimes people say, oh, we're living in a dream, maybe I'm just hallucinating this whole thing. Doesn't matter. I'm gonna be honest with you right now. I personally believe there's something weird about this world. There's something it's just a little bit weird. There's something off. And I'm not saying it's a simulation. I'm not saying it's a computer game. I'm not saying it's a schizophrenic fantasy or a dream, but it's probably something. It's probably something like that if we knew from further out what the truth was, it'd be really ridiculous. Okay, so back up for a second. So in this show Upload, it's all a simulation, right? He's in this like simulated, like not virtual reality, because it's like he's in a computer. And so he walks around and he's like, whoa, look at the graphics. Look how amazing this is. And a few weeks ago when I watched this, I was a little bit down for whatever random reason. And honestly, one side note is I notice if I don't get enough sleep, I get like slightly depressed. And like I start having negative thought loops. And I start thinking like, man, like even with YouTube, sometimes I'm like, oh, look, I'm not even having any success with YouTube. Like, oh man, there's people that are so much more, like I compare the worst parts of myself to the best parts of others, which is terrible. But I start just going down these negative spiral loops. Anyways, I was kind of doing that, but I switched my mindset and I thought, what if I was in a simulated reality? What if someone told me, absolutely, Travis, this is just a simulation. How liberating and how freeing would that be? And so what I started doing is I started walking around and looking at the trees and touching everything, like looking at this camera and being like, whoa, the graphics are so real. And like, this is so beautiful. Like, have you ever played a video game and it has really beautiful graphics and you're like, wow, that's so amazing. But yet in real life, we look at the best graphics we possibly can see and we don't think to ourselves, wow, that's really amazing. What if you did that? What if you switched your mindset to thinking everything you see around you is almost an alien world? You know, when you go on vacation to a different country and like the little things that they do, you're so fascinated with, you're like, whoa, in Italy, they drink coffee standing up. Like, oh, that's so neat. What if you did that same thing in your everyday life? I don't always do this, but every once in a while, if I'm feeling down, I might do that. I switch and I'll go to the park and I'll feel a tree and just look at it like, wow, look how intricate and how beautiful this is. And I want to back up for a second too, because one thing I realized in watching this show Upload is I think people would go crazy if you died and you were put into this world where you didn't have purpose. I think humans need purpose and humans need to work hard. So I thought to myself, if I were to die, I would want them to wipe my memory. I wouldn't want to know that I'm in a simulated reality. And so I started thinking like, how do I know that didn't happen? How do I know that right now this isn't just a simulated reality? And there's one of my favorite Alan Watts, I'll try to put the link down below to this too. One of my favorite Alan Watts videos of all time. It starts off and he's like, I wonder. And he goes into this whole thought experiment. He's like, what if you could dream at night any dream you wanted to dream? So just imagine, let's play this right now. What if at night you could dream any dream you wanted to dream? How much fun would that be? Let's just say, and sure, if you had full control over your dreams and eventually you were able to change time dilation, you were able to make it feel like in one night you could live 70 years. Think of like Inception. You got really good at like imagining your entire life. And so every night you'd fall asleep and you'd live out this entire dream. You'd live out this entire life. And at first, what would you do? Well, you'd slay dragons and rescue princesses from dragons and have big explosions and crazy and do all this crazy stuff. But eventually that would get boring. And like a kid daring another kid to see how close they can get to a ledge, every night you'd go to sleep, you'd say, what if I could forget that I was dreaming a little bit? What if you could forget right now, what if I could forget that this is actually a dream to make it a little bit scarier? Because think about it, if you knew you were dreaming, fighting a dragon would get boring after a while because you knew it's just a dream. But what if you could forget you're dreaming? And so over time, you could actually train yourself to forget that it's a dream. And how do you know that's not what's happened right now? How do you know this isn't just number 1,000 time that you've fallen asleep and you're dreaming this entire existence? And so then the question becomes, what if this was a dream? This is something that fascinates me. What if this was a dream? What if this was a virtual reality simulation right now? How silly would you feel about all the things you get stressed out? It's just a dream. It's just you're in control, man. It's just a virtual reality, whatever it is. How silly would you feel? And what would you do if I told you unequivocally, this is a dream, this is a simulation? Don't get me wrong. If you go murder someone, you're still going to go spend 30 years of this dream reality in jail. It's still not something you should do. That will have negative consequence. It's not like you can just wake up from the dream. Like, you're stuck in this dream, but it is a dream. Eventually you are going to wake up. How would that change your life? And when I think about that, for me, I wouldn't get stressed about so much stuff. I'd spend more time looking at how beautiful everything is. I'd spend more time doing things that I love to do, that I want to do. And so my question is, why aren't we doing that anyways? Like, what does reality mean? What does it mean to be in reality? Like, why is it important? And I'm not saying to go do negative things. I'm not saying to go do bad things. I'm saying that it should be a realization to go do good things. That you should be living a happy and virtuous life, not because for some religious reason of some afterlife, but because it's fun and it's enjoyable. But also and that's part of like learning to listen to yourself. So I'm gonna go, I love these kind of tangents. If you want me to do more tangents like this, comment down below. But I got lesson number 7. This is the final lesson, and I'm gonna talk about this more in a future video, but this is to not get so attached, not to get so fixed on an idea. And I'm gonna give a small example and a big example for this. The small example is I like to launch things on Tuesdays. The reason being is if you launch it on a Tuesday, people can buy on Tuesday, they can buy on Wednesday, they can buy on Thursday. I usually, like for instance, my course, I'll launch on a Tuesday and end on the next Tuesday. Or on a Kickstarter, I'll launch on a Tuesday and end on a Thursday. And so I was so attached to this idea that I need to launch Performance Nut Butter Cacao on a Tuesday. And it happened to be that Ariana's birthday this May, I think it fell on a Tuesday, or I think it was on a Tuesday, or maybe it was I don't remember right now off the top of my head. But I remember having this realization like, oh man, I really want to launch on this Tuesday and it just happens to be Ariana's birthday. And I'm like, but I don't want to do that to her. I don't want the whole day to be about, I don't want her birthday day to be about the launch of Performance Nut Butter Cacao. So what I did is I realized, well, why don't I just launch it on a Thursday? And that freed my mind up to like, oh my God, duh, of course I can do that. But I get so personally attached to certain ideas. Another example of this, obviously, I've talked about 100 times, is Performance Nut Butter Cacao in general. Like, or working on Performance Nut Butter. I knew that it could be super successful. I knew it could be super profitable, blah, 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 whatever. And so I'm like, this one thing needs to be, this needs to be successful. I need to focus all my attention over here. Instead of looking over here at my YouTube channel and the course and realizing that, oh, this is a pretty big opportunity. Maybe I should spend some more time on this. And this over here could probably help out not only me more, but it can also help out the world quite a bit more. And so this is where like Buddhism and like philosophy and psychology and all this kind of stuff start interweaving with entrepreneurship. Is you realize that as entrepreneurs, we get very attached onto ideas. And in Buddhism, they say that all suffering stems from attachment. And that's a whole nother side tangent. Another example of this is in my head, I had it that every Monday, I had it in my head that I need to be working on Performance Nut Butter at least one day a week. And so I'm like, Mondays, every Monday I'm gonna work on Performance Nut Butter. And only in the last few weeks that I realized, why? Who made up that rule? What if I just work on Performance Nut Butter whenever I feel like it? And in fact, maybe I only work on Performance Nut Butter 1 hour a week. Why does it have to be 1 day a week? And so I've switched my mindset and switched my thinking into saying, you know what? No, but I was so attached that, well, if it's a real business and if I'm taking it seriously, I better work on it at least 1 day a week. Nah. You know what? Now I'm gonna work on it like 1 to 2 hours a week, max. And I'm basically, the only time I'm gonna work on it is if I'm training Jake, my new intern. If I'm training him, that's about the only time I'm gonna work on it. I'm not gonna work on it other than that. Maybe like some small things. I'm gonna be launching jars, Performance Nut Butter Original and Performance Nut Butter Cacao jars. I'll be launching those soon. And so for the launch of those, yeah, I'm probably gonna work on it a little bit because it'll be fun. But honestly, I don't need to be so attached to these different ideas. So if you haven't yet, please hit subscribe. I'm probably either at this point at 100K or right almost about to hit 100K subscribers. I want to do that. So hit that subscribe button and also smash that bell notification. Thanks for watching, and remember to enjoy the journey, because at the end of the day, remember that once you get to the goal, once you get to wherever you're going, you're gonna have another goal and another goal. So the key skill for you is to learn to enjoy the journey. Thanks so much.